Speaking of hearing enough of something, oh, I don't know now. I'm speechless. I'm at a loss for words. The AEW television program, this was this past Wednesday night, July 27th. We've talked about all the WWE happenings. The WWE, the television shows are just rotten. But the behind the scenes news is intriguing and you can't get enough of it. Well, in AEW, the television programs, they're not boring, they're not bland, they're not blasé, they're just unprofessional and inexplicable. So maybe that's the difference. Behind the scenes news, I don't know. I think all of their news plays out in front of God and everybody right on television. But it's at this point, it's almost like the WWE has never been more vulnerable. There's chaos going on behind the scenes. Who's running the show? Time for a upstart wrestling promotion to capitalize with its new talent and its fresh look and its groundbreaking something. And what we've got is a show that I'm convinced now that even the people who watch it every week and like most of it can't possibly understand what the fuck's going on. I mean, I've heard of, some Shitstain used to have the idea, well, we have to make it to where if they miss a week of TV, they don't know what's going on. Because then they won't miss a week. And my response to that was always, a lot of people actually have a life or kids or a job or whatever. And if you make it where they miss a week and they don't know what's going on and you don't recap them the next week, after about 2 or 3 weeks of those, they're just going to go away because they can't figure anything out. But in this case, you can watch this show every week, AEW, and you still don't know what the fuck is going on. Am I overstating this, Brian? Was this past Wednesday night the epitome of what the fuck is happening in front of me and why?
I will agree that I do not think they do a good job of explaining, despite the people that like Excalibur, I don't think they do a good job on commentary of explaining things. I will say that the roster is so bloated right now that it feels like just people show up and disappear and randomly are there and gone. But certain people are there nonstop all the time.
Yes, but it's not even that. It's not even the unfamiliarity with some of the talent, but the fact that from week to week, you can't figure out why these people are doing the things they're doing. People turn on somebody one week and a week later they turn back and they fucking re-embrace the people that they just were mad at last week.
Well, focus has never been AEW's strong suit in the booking. In terms of the actual booking week to week, not the matchmaking, but the week to week booking, focus has never been Tony's strong suit.
Well, we're gonna go through this show and we're gonna attempt to try to tell everybody who's on whose side at this point. It could change at any minute, but they started out hot with the AEW Interim World Championship. Plumber Moxley defending against Rush with Jose.
Roosh. And you know how I know it's Roosh? Did you hear his music?
I've heard music. I wasn't listening to it. Was it Tom Petty? I'm not sure what they played for it.
I'm not sure who performed the music, but from what I heard on TV, his theme song seems to be Roosh, Roosh, Roosh. So they just say his name over and over again. It's Roosh.
Well, I was rushing to get through this. But again, this guy just showed up. Has he had a match yet in AEW? Maybe he had one on YouTube. So he gets a title shot at the world champion.
Big win at the Ring of Honor pay-per-view.
Oh, well, there you go. One good win in the right place.
Against his brother.
I don't even want to get started. So this was a situation where apparently Plumber Moxley's the babyface because even though he likes to drink blood and break bones and snap ligaments, the other guy had the manager. So Rush does the jump start from behind and they go to the floor. And I will say that Rush was aggressive and he looks in good shape and he was all over Moxley. And they get back in the ring and then they go back to the floor and Moxley is now bleeding. It took like 3 minutes. And they were on the floor
it's
forever.
Every match now with him.
Well, yeah. But now you just have to, it's like, how long is it going to be before Jane Cargill says the word shit? How long is it going to be before Moxley starts bleeding? And after they were on the floor forever, he threw Moxley back in, and Moxley retaliated for this beating by running, hitting the ropes, and diving back out on top of Rush. And then Mox beat Rush up on the floor and just buried poor Paul Turner, the referee. And then they get back in the ring, and he beats Rush up in the ring, and then they trade chops. And then the heel takes back over, and all momentum was lost, and everybody just come to a halt.
That's every Moxley match. They do the trading chops, and then that happens.
And also, there's no format to the match with him. It's just, somebody's going to beat him up, then he's going to beat somebody else, and they go back and forth. There's no set of heat and comeback or false finishes or hope spots, it's just back and forth. And then they go back out to the floor, and Rush chokes the plumber with the camera cable while the referee is trying to count them out, which they're not listening to anyway. So then after the cable choking, they went to a break. So they're only 10 minutes into the show. The momentum, the advantage in the match has changed back and forth for no apparent reason. Even though Rush is the heel because he's got the manager, they're both either cheating or not cheating at the same level. And Moxley's already bleeding, and they've already gone back and forth and done all the shit on the floor, and now they go to the break, which means we're going to have to watch more of this on the other side. So we come back right as Moxley hits kind of a sloppy superplex, and then they both just lay there. There's no cover. He's not attempting to win. Then they get up and they trade forever again. And then when they've just beat each other to shit, then they started running wrestling spots at 100 miles an hour. And again, I'm thinking, am I watching this match backwards? By the way, the heel does the wrestling moves better than the babyface. So somehow, in all of this, Rush was going to try a superplex, but Mox countered by biting his face, and he took a bump into the ring. Jose threw the tablet or the laptop or whatever in the ring and distracted the referee while Moxley is climbing the top or is on the top rope going to come off. But Moxley has to wait for Andre Olio to come out to push him off the top turnbuckle. So Moxley is up on the top for like 5 or 6 full seconds. And it was one of those time standing still moments while the referee's with Jose, the tablet's in the ring, Rush is laying on the ground, and Moxley's on the turnbuckle, and nobody's moving anywhere. And then Andre gets there and pushes Moxley off the top. But then here comes the Lucha Brothers and Alex at 100 miles an hour, and they run Andre off out of the building. And somehow, during the period of time the chase scene is going on where they're running Andre out of the building, the camera missed it, so we don't know for sure, Moxley is the one that gets a 2 count on Rush. After he was just pushed off the top rope by the heel, crotches himself on the top rope and falls into the ring, and the other babyfaces come and run the guy out, and then Moxley's the one who gets a 2 count on Rush. And then Rush takes back over. This match is going to keep going. And Moxley won't sell anything for any period of time past 2 seconds. But now they've done the fucking heel run in and the babyface save run in, and they're going to keep the match going. It would not end. And finally, Moxley hit his double arm DDT from just out of nowhere. But Rush kicked out of that, so Moxley turned over and got the choke on him and choked him out. So they can make even a finish like that as flat as possible. Either win with your goddamn finish Or don't fucking hit it and let the guy kick out of it and then just grab something else and win with that. Jesus fucking Christ. Fuck, he's rotten. Plumber Moxley, I trended for saying this, and a lot of people happen to agree with it, come to find out. He's the worst pushed wrestler in the world. And it's all the same. What'd you think of this fiasco? 20 minutes of this, by the way.
It went on for a very long time. You summed up a lot of my thoughts. The one thing I wanted to point out again, because I always do, is just in the middle of the spot, the middle of the match, there's no reason to do the trading chops or trading blows or trading forearms or any of that shit. In the middle of the match, it happens like multiple times a show now. I don't like Moxley's matches. There are a lot of people that do. But like you just said, after the controversy where you trended for saying that he's the worst wrestler in the world.
I'm not on an island.
No, we did hear from a lot of people that actually agreed with you that said, I thought I was alone. I thought it was me. There's a lot of I thought it was me's out there when it comes to Jon Moxley. Just not for me. I can't wait for Punk to get back and just put the Blackpool group minus Danielson and the Jericho group, put them in like a segment every week. And then give the Bucks in their camp a segment every week, and then let the rest of the show be the good wrestling.
Well, we'll get to poor Bryan Danielson. Jesus Christ, how the mighty have fallen. Jericho music played, and here came Jericho and many of the appreciators. It was Sammy and Ty Conti and Anna Jay and Cool Hand Luke. Now, Daniel Garcia was not out there because he's going to be in the main event tonight, of course. Is Daddy Mac Daddy hurt, or did his head swell further and they had to ice it, or what has happened to him? He wasn't there.
I don't know. And at this point with AEW, I just kind of figure everyone's hurt.
So Jericho cut a promo on Moxley because Moxley's still in the ring. Now, we've had 20 minutes of this god-awful, shitty match, but now the Shakespeare comes into play where we're going to have our drama. So Moxley standing there listening to Jericho, and Jericho says that his role is better than Moxley's role. And I don't know what baked goods have to do with this. Jericho looks like somebody hit him in the face with Floyd, and not the barber, the bat. Between the gig marks and the broken nose and the black eyes and the... So then he talks for a minute, and then he hands the microphone to Anna Jay and let Anna Jay talk. Anna Jay is now Anna J.A.S., which is sort of like Nikki A.S.S. And I wrote at that point, God, this is local cable access wrestling school stuff. Her promo, I mean. And I'm sitting there looking at Jericho standing there in between Sammy Guevara and Ty Conti and Anna J.A.S. and Cool Hand Luke. And it looks like Chris Jericho doing an appearance on stage at a high school assembly. With these are the honor school students that got to stand up on stage with him. So Moxley hates the sports entertainment, and he answers Jericho and makes fun of his new gimmicks and his nicknames and his trademarks. That promo wasn't actually bad because actually this is the best thing. It's two guys that we don't like that also don't like each other, so they can knock each other, and we can kind of enjoy that. But so the gist of this whole conversation is, again, Mark booking. Moxley doesn't want the wizard. He doesn't want the rock star wannabe that we've been getting lately. He doesn't say, I want the old Chris Jericho, the Chris Jericho that was the undisputed WWE champion, the Chris Jericho that main evented pay-per-view against The Rock or whatever the fuck. He has to go back, and he doesn't even say, I want the Chris Jericho from the early days of AEW. He says, I want the Chris Jericho from the Super J Cup. Not the Chris Jericho that drew mega money and was one of the biggest wrestling stars in the world 15 years ago. He wants the Chris Jericho from the Super J Cup 30 years ago.
And not even the original Super J Cup, the second one.
And I mean, hey, if he wanted any more from Chris Jericho, he'd have to be wearing a diaper and carrying a fucking rattle and drinking out of a baby bottle if he wanted him to go any further back. But he doesn't want the Chris Jericho that was a big star. He wants the Chris Jericho off of tape that he watched in his basement when he was fucking homeless in Cincinnati or whatever.
Well, that wasn't the big one. It was all about, I want the last survivor of the Heart Dungeon.
The last survivor, that I was about to say in the last line, I want the last survivor of the Heart Dungeon. Chris and Lance went to train with the Hart Boys. They didn't train with Stu.
They didn't train with the Hearts. Isn't a story that one of the Hearts showed up on the first day and never showed up again?
Yeah, that the Hart, what was it, Bruce? It was Bruce Keith, that started the training camp.
Okay, one of those two, yeah.
Bruce or Keith started the training camp, and then Chris and Lance both went from Winnipeg or wherever the fuck they went from and showed up, and I think they saw a Hart brother a day or two, and then they ended up teaching the class that they were in. They ended up being the instructors because they were only two that looked like they could stand up without help.
Wouldn't Teddy Hart be the last survivor of the Hart Dungeon? In terms of wrestlers and age and who would have actually been there?
I think they're still waiting for the results of the DNA test before they claim Teddy.
Harry Smith, maybe?
Harry Smith, there you go. But the point is, no, Chris didn't survive the dungeon because he wasn't in the dungeon because the dungeon was closed to all but intermittent family members at that point. But so this whole thing, that was the first 30 minutes of the show. And apparently we're going to have to watch, because Punk's not going to be ready for All Out or All In or whatever happens Labor Day weekend in Chicago. We're going to have to see the plumber against the trademarker.
Maybe.
If either one of them lasts that long, they've still got, a little over 6 weeks.
They set up an angle, or they did an angle to set things up on Rampage, which I know you didn't watch last night. For some reason, I decided to watch it. You need to watch the show. It's so bad. You need to watch how bad it is. It's really bad.
I've figured that out before. That's why I don't watch it. I don't need to watch it to figure out that it's a rotten program.
Apparently, they're setting it up so Jericho, I think Wednesday, is going to go up against Wheeler Yuta. And the winner of that match gets Moxley.
Oh, good.
Because there's the intrigue of Yuta's had several other matches with Moxley. Yuta, who one of the listeners got in touch and said he sounds like Ben Shapiro on the mic, and he really fucking does.
At least it's not Ben Stein, but go ahead.
But he's kind of over with some of those fans there, but they're going to do that apparently. Him against Jericho, leading into whoever wins, and you got to think it would be Jericho, but at this point you don't know what the booking there.
I have a feeling Jericho's not going to be doing a job for Wheeler Useless.
If Tony gets him to do a job for Wheeler Yuta, and you almost got me saying the wrong name now, that would be the most impressive job as a promoter and booker that Tony's ever done.
Well, and actually, what if they're going with Moxley and Jericho for the title at the pay-per-view, then what should happen is Jericho hospitalizes Yuta on Wednesday night.
I've been trying to remember where we saw it most recently, and I can't remember. And it maybe have happened more than one time, but the whole, I don't want you. I want the 1985 version of you. I want the version of you that used to eat wood. I want the version of you that likes bugs. Like, we've seen this several times, and I can't remember who did it recently, but we've seen this several times.
Yeah, you know what that does? That points out to people, 20 years ago, that guy's a lot better than he is now. He's the shits right now. No wonder he don't want to wrestle that guy. He wants to wrestle a guy he was 20 years ago. But guess what? He's 20 years older, so I guess he's just the shits. I always like to point out the flaws in my pay-per-view main event as a booker, as a promoter. I always like to point out the flaws in those people that are in the match that's supposed to sell my tickets and draw me money.
Can I say one more thing?
I wish you would.
I'm really happy that Anna Jay is getting a shot. Despite whatever you think, out of all the women there, she's been athletic. She seems into everything she does. She's not perfect. And of course, she came out of QT school. She didn't come out of Tom Pritchard school or anything. But she has shown a lot and she's young. So I want to talk directly to her. That guy is going to tell you a bunch of really bad advice. Don't listen to it. Seek out someone else, whether it's CM Punk when he comes back. Seek out anyone else. Don't listen to Jericho. It'll be a disaster. That's all I want to say.
Speaking of disasters, right after this 30-minute festival of ignorance, Sockface announced the Trios Championship that we've heard about, complete with the pretty belts. So that's the big major angle that they were saying. They held off the third in the series between the Hardly Boys and FTR because a big major angle is coming up. And there's where the Hardly Boys and Twinkle Toes are going to reunite and win them some more belts so they can have belts too and not do a job for the best tag team in the world.
I question if we're ever going to get a third match with FTR and the Young Bucks, and I think the Young Bucks right now, recognizing what's happened, are going to do everything in their power to make themselves as super over as baby faces as they can in their segments. So let's see what happens, because they see what's going on. They are hypersensitive to what wrestling fans are saying, good and bad. They see what's going on.
They're just hypersensitive, but they've spent all this time trying to be these shit-disturbing, gum-chewing, smarmy-faced little heels, and I think it's worked fairly well in that people now see that they're so good at that must be their real personality, and now they're going to have to go out and fake being nice again so that they can try to get the fans to cheer for them so that it won't be so obvious that everybody likes FTR more because they're better. And the kids just from Cucamonga just cannot accept that. Speaking of accepting things, I've accepted it now that Dante Martin is going to wrestle once every 3 months and hurt himself.
Did you hear the news after this match?
He hurt himself.
He hurt himself.
Yes. Tony Schiavone did an interview with him. He's going to wrestle Sammy Guevara tonight. It wasn't a bad promo. He's got more oomph to him now, and he didn't get jumped and physically attacked, even though he was backstage, so that wasn't bad. But then, since Sammy has Ty, Dante's big go-home line was going to be tonight, Sky Blue's going to be in my corner. And I said it in a more exciting way than he did. He just kind of blurted it out and looked dumbfounded and trailed off. So that's the big news. Sky Blue will be there to offset Ty Conti. There's a reason why when a heel has a girl in his corner that you wait until he's against a main event guy and the main event guy says, I'm going to get a girl to fucking keep an eye on your girl. And it needs to be a girl with a name. But when you just do it when every match I'll go find a girl in the locker room. There's a million of them. Hey, Sky Blue, come here. Then you've just taken the edge off for when somebody does it and it means something.
This was never said on TV that I heard, and I did have it on mute a few times during the match. But I believe I was told by someone there that Sky Blue and him are in a relationship.
I don't care.
It's just we were never told that.
Let them go to the movies. Let them go to Steak and Shake. I don't care, but Sky Blue is nobody, and Dante's an underneath talent, and they're just rushing all this shit. Anyway, then, oh my God, the FTW title match. And I don't know where to begin. Danhausen is challenging Ricky Starks for the FTW title. And Danhausen comes to the ring. Then they play a heel Starks video that was great.
Tremendous. He was such a star.
Yes, he looked like $1 million. And it's new. We haven't seen that. And then he gets a bigger, more grand entrance. And he looks great and like a star. And I think, okay, they're finally going to pull the trigger on pushing Ricky Starks. The only problem I had was it makes it silly that he's wrestling Danhausen, but at least, we've got something. Tony Khan has finally realized I don't need Daniel Garcia on fucking TV every week. I've got Ricky Starks. I could put him on TV every week. People that actually watch. And I thought that for about 3 more minutes. So Danhausen curses Ricky Starks, and Starks responds with a big boot. But then he walked into Danhausen's boot, and then Danhausen gave him a Northern Lights suplex. And I wrote, what are they doing? Danhausen is getting offense. I thought this was going to be, okay, people like Danhausen, so when Ricky Starks beats the shit out of him in 2 minutes, it gets Starks over and those people are pissed. Well, suddenly Danhausen is kicking the shit out of Ricky Starks. Danhausen doesn't know how to do a schoolboy. Did you see the schoolboy?
I saw the attempt.
The fuck? And he got a 2 count on Starks with that. And finally, Starks comes up, hits a spear, boom, 1, 2, 3. And I wrote, what the fuck is this? It started out so good. Here comes Starks. They've got the video, the music, the entrance. And he's selling for Danhausen. And then he gets the microphone and does the promo again like last week. I've got more gas in the tank. I want another challenger. The only difference in last week was this time when he said that they paused 10 or 15 seconds before playing the music. They're listening because at least, well, I want another, send somebody out here, and nobody comes at it. Come on. You make the heel. You force him to go, come on. It looks like it's impromptu and unplanned. Somebody has to have the guts to come out here, and then you play some music and somebody comes out. It's just a little thing. But however, having said that, the music plays and here comes Hook. Now let's recap this, Brian. Stop me if I misstate anything. Taz is the leader of Team Taz, right?
And on commentary here, yes.
And on commentary here. Ricky Starks is a member and has been of Team Taz since the inception of Team Taz.
Probably the best member of Team Taz.
Yes, Ricky Starks also has the FTW title belt, which was introduced in AEW by Taz because it's Taz's belt from ECW that he started and did the whole thing, and we talked about the FTW title belt. So Ricky Starks, the FTW champion, Taz's belt that Taz brought into AEW to give to a member of Team Taz, and goddamn, now the member of Team Taz that is the FTW champion that holds Taz's belt is being challenged by Taz's son, and Taz not only doesn't know that it was going to happen, but has no explanation for why it might be happening. They actually even said, well, we don't know why this might be happening. And then Hook gets in and takes over on Ricky Starks and suplexes him. And then Starks takes over and suplexes Hook. And their shit is better than the fucking shit with Danhausen, and certainly better wrestling than we got with Moxley and Who's-he, what's-he at the start of the program. But I wrote in capital letters, who are they pushing? Who's the heel? Who's the babyface? Who's getting the push? Why is this happening? Why are they fighting? And then Starks hits a spear and goes for his finish, and Hook reverses it and gets a choke on him, and Starks taps out. The son of Starks' manager and coach that started the FTW title beats a member of Team Taz for the FTW title, and Taz has no explanation for why any of this is going on. And I wrote, what the fuck is happening? And so then Tony gets in the ring with Starks after the break, I think, with Starks and Hobbs. There's Hobbs there now. And by the way, if you needed to put somebody on TV every week and you have a choice of Daniel Garcia or Powerhouse Hobbs, so Tony's in the ring with Starks and Hobbs. And suddenly Starks is a babyface, even though he was a heel in his goddamn entrance video 10 minutes ago. He's okay with losing because he made the most of the FTW title, like he's made the most of everything else. He's worked his ass off. He deserves to be able to talk for more than 40 seconds. My goddamn time is right now. Now suddenly, he breaks into doing the best babyface promo that I've heard on this fucking show in weeks. To where he's tired of waiting. He's tired of people saying his time will come. My goddamn time is now. And the people are starting to get with him because they know that while the rest of these fucking indie outlaw asswipes and friends of the EVPs and outlaw talent of various stripes is forced down our throats every week on television on this goddamn amateur fiasco of a show where people slip out of fucking cages they can't get unlocked through the bars. And here's Ricky Starks, a talent that's been hidden, like Jay Lethal, like Powerhouse Hobbs, like a number of people we've talked about. You want to see more of them, you can't find them because they're not friends with the boss, and the boss doesn't dress up like them for Halloween. So the people are behind Starks, and they're getting with him. And I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be great. Maybe we got Starks and Hobbs are going to fucking become a babyface tag team over all of this shit. And just then, as Starks says, so me and Hobbs are going to... Hobbs clotheslined Starks from behind in his bad neck and almost took his head off for a shoot. A guy that broke his neck about 6 months ago, he had to clothesline him on the side of the head. And now, Taz is surprised again. Just because it's his team and all of his handpicked members, he has no idea why they're beating each other. And his family, his son, he's completely clueless as to why they're beating each other up in front of him. And Hobbs hits Sparks. Hobbs hits Starks with a spine buster and stands over him. So now Hook is the FTW champion. Starks is a babyface. But his program apparently is going to be with Hobbs, his partner who just stabbed him in the back, for reasons that their own manager and coach has no idea of. That's my explanation for what I saw, Brian. Did I miss something?
No, you got it all, but let's focus on some positives here. Ricky Starks, we've been saying it for a while, and if it wasn't for all of the awful booking in this one segment, I think we would say, wow, this was his coming out party. He really showed everyone what he has here tonight. In a package, on the mic, in the ring, the reaction from the crowd. Instead, it was just a puzzling series of events. That why would anyone think this was the best way to go? I'm totally against Ricky Starks being a babyface right now. Him and Hobbs have been heels that haven't been used. I've been waiting for them to get a run to do something, either together or just as two singles who are friends. Now we're going to have to watch them feud against each other. That's not really what I want.
And then who gets over?
Whose side will Taz take?
Well, besides that, Starks needs a push. Starks has not had one. Starks has been on the periphery of everybody else's shit and stop and start and disappears and comes back and whatever. And Hobbs has never gotten a chance to get started. I can't remember the last time he wrestled on television. He's never had a match, my God, 2 weeks in a row. Well, that would just be insane. But it's been months since we've seen him wrestle, hadn't it? And he's usually in multiple man situations. So now you've got two guys, whether they're baby faces or heels, and both guys have been both. Remember, Hobbs started as a baby face with a sad story about seeing his brother get murdered. Then 2 weeks later, he switched heel. But I think they're both great heels. But they both need a push. They both need wins over people on television. They both need some kind of coherent strategy to elevate them to be bigger names. And none of this is it. Because if they're wrestling each other, one guy's going to come out on the losing end. That's why you don't put people that you need to get both of them over against each other. So Brian, I got to be honest with you. At this point, I thought, what do I do? Do I turn this program off now? I was never a heavy drug user, but something has happened in my brain. I'm not connecting with this. I'm not understanding what's going on. It has to be me. It can't be that the programming is inexplicable. That's what I thought at first. But then you know what I did? I called somebody. And they told me, no, it's not you. The programming is inexplicable. I just needed somebody to talk to because you got to take care of your brain and your mind. For most people, it's the only one you're going to have. And when you're watching stuff like this that's just visually off-putting and mentally stressful, you got to talk to somebody to make sure that it's not you. It's indeed the wacky situation that you've been observing. And that's what the folks at BetterHelp can do. They can talk to you. They can perk up your brain. They can make you realize, hey, you're not in this all alone. We feel the same way. That's what you got to do. How we care for our minds and ourselves affects how we experience life, how everything that we do goes. So, supporting a healthy brain, you can take power naps. We know about good night's sleep, but you can also learn a new language. You can learn to speak to the natives in AEW in their own particular, peculiar language and their strange customs and habits. Or, I'm telling you, go out there and see them in the wild.
About?
The AEW wrestlers in the wild, they have weird customs and strange habits. They eat a variety of loathsome living creatures, but you know, it's all part of the global culture, and that's how you expand your mind. And you can call the folks at BetterHelp if you have to watch this program, and you'll say, is it just me? And they'll say, no, it's not just you. Everyone feels this way, and they'll make you feel better. Because BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video and phone and even live chat-only therapy sessions, so you don't have to get on camera. You don't have to go out in public. You don't have to sit in front of anybody if you don't want to. You can talk to them on your terms, remotely. Or in the case of my terms, not at all. I find it's easier if I don't talk to people. But a lot of people need to talk to somebody. And if you do, BetterHelp is there. It's more affordable than in-person therapy. You can be matched up with a therapist in under 48 hours. And these folks aren't just, you know, local yokels from the Kmart. They're licensed professional therapists. They know what they're doing. They can take you apart and put you back together again. And right now, folks, at BetterHelp, that's HELP, BetterHelp.com/JCE, our listeners, the good people, get 10% off their first month's services. That's BetterHelp.com/JCE, 10% off your first month's services. And you actually schedule your phone calls or video chats for Thursday morning. That way, you watch this show on Wednesday night, you make notes on what you didn't understand, and you have a therapy session on Thursday morning, and they can straighten you right out. Then they'll tell you flat out that Tony Khan's the one that's screwy. It's not you.
What if they're going to be especially busy on a Thursday? If you tell everyone to call up on a Thursday.
Well, no, because most people don't watch AEW.
No, they don't.
All right, should we jump back into this?
Yes.
Sammy Guevara and Dante Martin with Ty Conti and Sky Blue and I guess her tag team partner C Green. I forgot to pay attention to this match because, to be honest, there was leaping and flipping and springboards and backflips and diving, and it just basically looked the same as everything else because of all of that. The girls all got in a fight afterwards, including Anna JAS, who came down, who's reconciled with Ty Conti, who she turned on 3 weeks ago. And the takeaway from this is Dante does a springboard off the apron onto the top rope, then jumps from that rope to another rope, then does a backflip off that rope and is supposed to land on his feet so that Sammy can jump up from the other apron to the top rope and jump off backwards and hit him with a cutter of some description. Brilliant spot. And I saw that in the 72 Olympics. Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci did a tag team fucking uneven parallel bar and used that spot. The point is, Dante flips backwards off the top rope and lands in the middle of the ring for this meaningless fucking finish that nobody would remember 2 days later because of all the other shit on this program that looks all the same. And he lands and he hurts his knee. And then he staggers over, and Sammy jumped backwards off and caught him in an approximate cutter, but because Dante was off balance and had already hurt his fucking knee or ankle, or what was it, the knee or the ankle?
I thought it was his knee.
Whatever it is. So when Sammy gives him the cutter, he almost landed on the leg that fucking Dante had just hurt. Because Dante couldn't throw himself forward, his leg was bent up on it. The point is, it was a goddamn monkey fucking a football. And now this guy's hurt again. He nailed perfectly 3 or 4 death-defying leaps to the top rope and flips outside and everything. And if he'd done half of that number, it might have been great and showed that he was exciting without taking it into the level of the phony gymnastics that everybody else does. But instead, he's got to do all that shit and then try to do that fucking finish and hurt himself. I don't blame the guy he's trying to get over. I blame the people that are not teaching these guys how to get over and how not to do ridiculous shit that is too much, risk-reward ratio off the chart, whatever the case, and how to make him remember it. He did 5 spectacular things, hurt himself on one of them. If he'd have done 2 that he could do perfectly, he'd have 2 more that they hadn't seen that he could do later, and he wouldn't have hurt himself. And at some point, he could try to learn how to wrestle in between jumping and flipping so that he'd stay over once he gets over with the jumping and the flipping. So now Dante Martin's out of commission for flipping off the top rope and landing on his feet. And then they did a parking lot pre-tape. Remember I mentioned we sure would like to see Jay Lethal on a weekly basis like we do Jericho's Stooges and the rest of these fucking outlaw dipshits that Tony Khan wants to adopt and fucking give them his inheritance. You think Daniel Garcia will be starting a new wrestling promotion in 20 years because old Tony Khan will say the same thing to him that Tony's dad said, I'm just going to give you your inheritance now so I can see you have fun with it while I'm still alive? When do the adoption papers get finalized with Tony and Garcia?
I don't know.
So there was a parking lot pre-tape. Lethal and Dutt and Zippy the Giant Pinhead had an argument with the Puddin' Gang and Pockets. So that's where Jay Lethal is now. Trapped with the Puddin' Gang and Pockets. How about the Jungle Boy promo? Have we figured out now why we never hear Jungle Boy speak? I did.
I thought this is the best thing he ever did on the mic.
Oh, boy. Well, the best thing, that's like being the nicest guy in prison. Can you name another time he's been on a microphone? But no, Brian, look at it this way. Tony Schiavone's in the ring. He brings out Jungle Boy. And they should have done what JR started doing, call him Jungle Boy Jack Perry. So now that he needs to be a human being, he'd actually be one. But it doesn't matter because he ain't going to be able to pull it off. Jungle Boy comes out to the ring with the emotion of a constipated mailman on his route, accompanied by the dinosaur that was interesting for 2 weeks when he was a heel at Christian Cage's monster. Now we've got the dinosaur back with Jungle Boy, and apparently he's Jungle Boy's best friend. So the point is, the reason why I thought this fucking sucked pond water is this kid has great charisma when he's in the ring, when he's selling. And we've said when he works with the other indie guys, it's just meaningless drivel. But when he's in there with somebody, the MJF match was excellent. Or when he's in with a veteran, when he's in with an actual wrestler instead of a gymnast, he's good. He can sell. He gets sympathy. He's got some fire to his comeback. He just has no personality. And now the knucklehead comes out, bleh, and Tony Schiavone's in the ring, and he asked Jungle Boy to respond to all the recent events. Jungle Boy snatches the microphone, and Tony just walks off. And Jungle Boy starts screeching. I can't even call it screaming, because it was screeching. He sounded like a 12-year-old girl now, but he's gone from a monotone, boring fucking non-presence to, Christian Cage, you're the biggest pussy I've ever met. It was not a flattering tone for the supposed babyface to take. He sounded like a fucking teenager pissed off over his stolen video game. No wonder he's never shown emotion before, if this is what he does when he's trying to show emotion. He had written down what he wanted to say, and he had memorized it, complete with choreographed facials and gestures that he made at the same time, while still putting no meaningful inflection into his material. He was either screaming or talking. He studied the script, and he gave a stiff, memorized recitation of same. And to make sure that everybody knows that he's finally lost his cool and he's gotten mad, because before you couldn't make him mad. Well, now he's mad. That's why he said bitch ass, shit, pussy, and pricks. All in the same interview. And then Tony comes back in and asks about Dino, because we need to tie that loose end up about how that Dino was alongside Christian Cage doing his bidding for 2 weeks, and then suddenly, with no explanation, well, the explanation is the monster is my best friend, and he was protecting Christian Cage so nobody got to him before I did. That was the explanation of why that suddenly Dino, for once in his miserable existence, was an interesting heel instead of a doofus babyface for 2 weeks. Because he was protecting. What do you think then the Jungle Boy's got to go and apologize to Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman? Say my best friend here, he was just trying to fool Christian Cage into thinking that he was on Christian's side instead of mine. That's why he fucking threw you through furniture and chokeslammed you and broke all your ribs and beat the fuck out of you and left you laying in a puddle of fucking goo last week. Because he was working Christian because I asked him to. So sorry. This does not make any fucking sense. So after 2 more shits, Jungle Boy starts telling a story. And this was, one would think that you could not figure out a way to fuck up getting sympathy when your father was a movie and TV star beloved by millions of fans and recently over the past few years died. But somehow he couldn't even muster up real words or emotions for that. And he had to prepare his material that sounded like it was coming off the goddamn South Park wrestling episode where they were emoting under a spotlight. And he starts telling the story about how he dug his own father's grave. He was there in that hole in the ground with his uncle. My tears fell in the dirt and turned it to mud. Did you hear that, Brian?
I did hear that, yeah.
I just want to make sure I wasn't fucking having delusions. My tears were falling in the dirt, turning it to mud. And then, I don't know what happened to the muddy grave that he was digging for his father. because we will never find out, because they jumped the gun. There was some statement that he was made. He wouldn't have gone into talking about his dead father and not put a period on it before being interrupted to put a period on at least one sentence so we'd see how he got out of the grave, except they piped Christian Cage in too quick. He's on the screen from the back and he's watching them on the screen. So it was a little awkward. And he had to say, hey, can you hear me? Maybe his sound wasn't up in the arena. I don't know. But finally he breaks in and he says that Dino made a mistake and that the reason why Christian, he says, ran last week is so he wouldn't hurt Jungle Boy. But now he's going to bury him next to his dad. This was already rotten and it was getting a lot rottener. Now, the highlight of the program over the past few weeks, Christian Cage's heel interview has been supplanted by a bad, stagey, phony, overacted, melodramatic babyface promo, and Christian doing a fucking pre-tape in the back that wasn't very good because this whole thing doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense. So, Christian Cage with Dino, I think, would have worked. I think Christian Cage was doing great heel promos, and we know he can work, and his shit makes sense. And Dino, that's the perfect spot for him. Don't let the big goof talk. Let him go out and smash people. Instead, we've got now Dino's back in the fucking Jetsons camp, or the Flintstones camp, rather, Jetsons. Sorry, that was Astro. Dino's back in the Flintstones camp with old Jungle Boy. And Christian is going to apparently have to wrestle, I guess, Dino to get to Jungle Boy. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. Explain any of this to me, Brian.
Well, I can't do that. I will say I liked it. I got a kick out of it. I don't think Jungle Boy was nearly as, I don't even know what to call what you did, screeching or prepubescent sounding. I don't think it came across that way. Now, he did immediately call him a pussy, so right away you're like, oh, wow, let's see where he goes. And he was going for a little while, and I agreed not all the material was good, but it was the most fire we've seen from him.
It was fake fire, though. It's not real. He's acting. It's obvious.
I started howling with laughter, though, while he was talking about burying his father. That's when Christian Cage cuts in, and he's just standing there. Now, Jungle Boy has pointed out that Christian's going through a divorce, that his wife should call Jungle Boy. Christian just no-sold all that, and he was just ready with his own insults. I got a kick out of it, but as good as Christian was those first 2 weeks, and he was still good here, it's just now what should have been drawn out better, what should have been booked out better, planned out better, everything's just kind of happening. I mean, look at the Ricky Stark segment, and then look at this. It's like, okay, here's like 4 months worth of stuff. Let's just do it all tonight. So I don't know what they're doing here. You're right, though. The Varsity Blondes, who apologizes to them? And he was going to protect Christian Cage so no one else could get to him. Who was going to try to get to him? You're the only one who really hated him, Jungle Boy.
Yes, and he hasn't wrestled against anybody else besides the Varsity Blondes that he never tagged in until they were decimated by the fucking giant fucking lizard. The next segment was the Hardley Boys in the parking garage with their little mascot, Brandon Cutlet. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Slander your name.
No.
So the bland, tasteless piece of white meat that does their camera work, Cutlet. And they're talking about the trio's title because they're walking in the parking garage and suddenly they see Hangman Adam Page. And it's awkward because, you know, they used to be friends, but now they're not friends anymore because of all this stuff that's going on. And they go, hey, man, we don't even want to talk to you forever. And then the Dork Order come in and interrupt. And they all, if all these people were in their teens or maybe, 11, 12, 13, 14, instead of late 20s at best and late 30s for some of them, then people might talk this way to each other. But does anybody want to hear professional wrestlers talk to each other like a bunch of goofy fucking nerds hanging out at the goddamn park, skateboarding. Oh man, I know I really wanted to talk to you. They're just so childish and simple-minded.
No, this stands out even in a show that has puzzling and bad promos at times. The stuff with the Bucks, it's like, I mean, I hate to jump on what you say because people just think you're ripping on them, but when you see shit like this and you use the word junior high school, there is some validity there.
Yeah.
That's what this seems like. It's like Sweet Valley High.
Because they're
What are
all
these
soft.
segments?
What did Undertaker say? They're soft. That's what it is. They're just soft. They want to play wrestler and they want to fantasize that they're these big, tough hero wrestlers, but they're not. They're fucking soft. They're soft children, and they bicker with each other with their meaningless arguments. And the only people that like that kind of thing are other soft, meaningless, bickering teenagers. And it's douchebags speaking douchebaggery. And it's phony on top of that. But they're setting themselves up because they'll bring fucking Twinkle Toes in and they'll be the 6-man tag team champions so they can all have belts and take pictures with them and play Twitch with them. Do you play Twitch or do you run Twitch or get on Twitch? What do you do with Twitch? Gene Anderson had a Twitch. It came from a stroke.
You broadcast on Twitch. You don't use...
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could say you're using Twitch, but hey, look, this is what they want. They'll get their Kenny back. They got Adam Page and the Dark Order. Let them have their segment where they all play with each other. They'll have the 6-man belts, so they'll have belts. They'll feel good about themselves. They'll have Kenny there with Adam Page. They can work on some teenage melodrama that will turn them into big baby faces, get the reaction they really want. Good for them.
Well, moving along more swiftly. Then they had a handicap match. Tony Nese and the lawyer Mark Sterling against Swerve. I know they've set this up in their mind with what's gone on the past couple weeks. But again, putting the manager in the handicap match, there's no reason because, for one thing, he's not over. He's never going to get over. Everybody knows he's not a lawyer. And not only does everybody know he's not a lawyer, he doesn't even try to act like one. Everything's comedy. Everything's phony. He does a parody of wrestling, of manager spots and manager, fucking tropes, as they say. The whole thing has been played for laughs from the start. And now on free television, they just put the manager in a handicap match. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit about him to begin with. And they're not going to give a shit about this because it's booked with Tony Nese, who never wrestles on the program, is his partner. It's an underneath manager with an underneath guy wrestling a middle card guy. Why do it? Same thing as when you cake the fucking guy and nobody cares about the guy. The cake doesn't matter. Now it just becomes meaningless wrestling angles done for no reason and gets no returns on it. A hot man, I know this better than anybody. A hot manager in a match or in a handicap match or being forced to 5 minutes with the babyface, if he wins, whatever the case, that can, under the right circumstances, and has many times, draw more money than the world heavyweight champion defending against the number one challenger. Because it's a personal issue and they want to see it. They want to see the guy get his comeuppance. Nobody gives a shit whether Mark Sterling is burned at the fucking stake or, given a fucking burial at sea. Because they don't care. They don't care about any of these people. So whatever happened here, I didn't care. And don't know. Did I miss anything?
I missed this segment. I went to the kitchen.
Good answer. Next, for the AEW Women's title, Thunder Rosa defended against Miyu Yamashita. Even though we don't have to watch Twinkle Toes on TV while he's injured and out rehabbing or, getting well or whatever, his influence is still felt. Whoever Miyu Yamashita is, I got a feeling she's from the Outlaw Mud Show in Japan. Am I right about that?
I don't know who she works for in Japan. I couldn't tell you.
I bet you we do. Mud Show Central. And here's the thing. Thunder Rosa, she's got the face paint. She comes out with the cowboy hat. She's got fire. She's got oomph. She's got a personality. She looks like she's happy to be there, or she's come to do something. She's got a mission. She comes out like a star or somebody who wants to be a star. And here we go with nameless Japanese outlaw girl number 74 that Harpo just can't get enough of. No facials, no personality, no body tone. Is not going to get over anywhere in this fucking country. No matter how hard Kenny and the rest of, what do they call the nerds in Japan? I've seen on Twitter, they say he's a weeble or a...
Is that what they, I have no idea. Is that what
he's a weeble or a weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. He's a weeble or something. That's what Japanese nerds are, that are just nerds, right? They're already watching this program. If you're a nerd, you're watching AEW, but there apparently ain't as many nerds as there used to be. This girl is not going to get over. Nobody's ever going to give a shit. She's not going to sell you a fucking ticket. She's not going to draw you 15 cents in Chinese money. If she was there to do a 5-minute job for Thunder Rosa, the women's champion that can work and talk and has personality and people have heard of, that would have been fine. But they were out there trying to do Flair and Steamboat. And just no. It ended up being two girls going through moves that you would look at as a practice match in wrestling school, because even though Rosa is good and has experience or whatever, this girl, Miyu, or Yumi, or both of us, whichever one she was, is just as bland as a goddamn bleh, as a head of cabbage. That's it. So, again, they had to do Flair and Steamboat, and they went through a break, and coming back on the other side, I wrote, I swear to God, this Japanese convenience store clerk is kicking the shit out of Thunder Rosa. And what good does that do? We're never going to see her again. If we do see her again, we won't remember we saw her the first time, because this was very unremarkable. But what are they fucking doing? Just because Kenny Olivier raises these goofy, untrained girls on pedestals, he refuses, to the detriment of any talent that might be available over here that might actually get over and be able to speak to people. He's going to spend Tony's money to fucking fly unending, interchangeable, untrained, amateurish looking, blasé, bland, boring girls from Japan. I wonder if he's flying them first class on Tony's dime. To go 20 minutes on TV with the fucking girl they're trying to get over as their champion. Just because Twinkle Toes gets a kick out of it. Jesus Christ. Comments on that match, if any?
It was all right. I didn't really pay too close of attention to it.
Yeah.
I'm not as hard on the women coming from Japan just because they're coming from Japan like you are, but I agree with the sentiment that there's no reason.
I'm hard on them because of the tour guide. Because the one, because here's the thing.
Well put.
They're not buying their own tickets. Somebody's bringing them over and somebody's picking them. And we know who that somebody is. And we know what we're going to get every time. And it's embarrassing.
With that said, to your point, you're probably right. The little bits I saw, Thunder Rosa was kind of getting beat up. And I don't know if I'm ever going to see her opponent again, but Thunder Rosa will be feuding with someone else next week on the show or whatever. You know, sometimes it's like, almost like 1990 WCW after, like, Ole was the booker, when just random things would show up on the Clash of the Champions, and then, like, the guy would be gone, and just people pop up, and you can never feel like you can invest in anyone, because there's just so many people, and just people disappear all the time. I don't know how many people were invested in this match, unless you just wanted to see a really good competitive match with the women's champion, but Thunder Rosa eventually
Wait a minute,
won.
I agree it was competitive, but really good?
Well, okay, I shouldn't have said really good. If I said it there,
They did all the moves. They just went through them in a blasé fashion because Rosa was trying to help this girl get over in some. See that they're all these modern day wrestlers are raised to be so giving and so unselfish and so friendly. That's why nobody gets over. I'm sorry, but I guarantee you, in any previous generation, not just a specific one, all of them, man, woman, or child, somebody comes over you've never heard of from fucking Japan, you got to go fucking 15 minutes on TV with them, and you're the champion of the company that is airing the television program, they're going to get a little offense. They ain't going to look great because it's your career you need to keep care of and take care of. Speaking of careers we need to take care of, what's happened to Bryan Danielson's? This was the capper. This was the capper. Daniel Garcia makes his entrance. He's announced at 187 pounds. And I think that's generous. And in wrestling tights, he looks like a UPS driver on a day at the beach. And he is wrestling Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson's first match back from apparently, we suspect he's had a concussion. It's never actually been confirmed. His first match back, and they're risking him for 17 minutes on TV with an undercard stooge because Tony Khan now has found some affection for Daniel Garcia, like he had before for Pockets. So this match I knew going in would be good. This would be a good match, regardless. It's Danielson, regardless of whether fucking Garcia was breathing or not. It'd be a good match, and it would probably make sense. I said that the match itself little did I realize what the finish was going to be. But the only thing it didn't make sense was, why have this fucking thing? Again, you bring your biggest star back, one of your biggest names, certainly one of the three biggest names in the company and possibly the best in-ring performer, fresh off a concussion, and put him against an underneath guy that is, again, not going to be over until I'm fucking dead, not because I'm going to stop it, but because it's going to take at least 10 or 15 years. Instead of... So... Danielson jump starts it and proceeds to kick the shit out of Garcia. And, of course, we also have the dichotomy where Danielson was the best heel in the business back in December for about 3 weeks and then had to join the Blackpool Combat Club, and now he's a babyface, but he wrestles like a heel because the Blackpool Combat Club, thanks to Moxley, likes to drink blood and snap necks. But Garcia is an actual heel because he's affiliated with the sports entertainment heel group where Jericho is the boss and tries to do everything he can to get heat, except when they play his music, and then he wants all the fans to sing along with it. So naturally, Garcia is going to take over here and then pull the padding up off the floor. And then grab Danielson and throw him away from the bare floor that he's just exposed. And then Danielson makes a comeback on the floor and then throws him back in the ring and hits him with a missile drop kick, but Danielson sells the missile drop kick. And right at this point, I wrote, Harley playing in her new bed is more entertaining. We got her a new bed. It's red and fluffy and furry, and she loved burying herself in it. But then Danielson did the Shawn Michaels concussion collapse. And do you know there are still people that think that he really did collapse?
No, really?
That night on Raw, I've seen it on Twitter. And for the people who don't know, when Shawn Michaels got shit kicked out of him in, what was it, Syracuse or Rochester by the Marines? Or the Marine?
Syracuse, I think.
Syracuse. Okay, Michaels got shit kicked out of him, got a concussion by the Marine that he pissed off trying to hit on the Marine's girlfriend. And so he was off television, and they concocted the statement that it was 9 Marines. It was actually 1 Marine, and Davey Boy was stuck in the back seat of the 2-door car and couldn't get out to save his ass. So then, after the concussion, And this was before Shit Stain started. This was not a Shit Stain idea. This was actually from Vince. I think it was late 1995. We were in Richmond, Virginia. And I remember the two things. Number one, I was so mortified because 1995 was a horrible year for the wrestling business. And we were in the Richmond Coliseum for a Monday Night Raw taping with what had to be only 2,000, 2,500 people in that building. The ring was at the end. And I'm thinking all the times I was here for Crockett, this fucking thing had 13,000 people in it. And now here we are. But nevertheless, and secondly, I managed Owen in a match against Shawn Michaels, and they did the deal where Shawn's wrestling and then suddenly gets dizzy and starts kind of, woozing around and collapses over to the side. And they're talking, it's the concussions. And me and Owen were supposed to, oh shit, what's going on here? Oh my God, we don't know what to do. And somehow that was I didn't understand how it was going to help Shawn at that time to remind people that he got the shit kicked out of him by the Marines. But nevertheless, they did the Shawn Michaels thing here. Danielson has had a concussion, so he gets dizzy and collapses. The difference in the two television programs' handling of this incident is when Shawn collapsed, me and Owen looked mortified, and so did the referee, and they got people at ringside to come in and tend to him and called medical personnel. And as I recall, we spent several minutes worried about Shawn before we went off the air. The match did not continue. In this case, the guy that had the concussion, the guy that also retired from wrestling because of multiple concussions and the after effects from aforesaid concussions, collapses from a concussion he's recently had, and then the heel threw him head first into the steel stairs and then DDT'd him on the exposed concrete floor for a break spot. Not the finish, not a hospitalization angle. That was the break spot. So when we come back, Danielson was bleeding. Of course, Moxley did it first in the same program, but now the guy who his career could be ended with one more concussion has collapsed, then run headfirst into the steel stairs, then DDT'd on the concrete floor. But 2 minutes after they come back from the break, he's giving the heel a belly-to-back suplex off the top rope. Then they started going back and forth. Multiple false finishes. Danielson goes for the label lock. Garcia escapes. Danielson hits his knee on the floor. And as he's rolling back into the ring after he's thrown Garcia back in, a hand from under the ring grabs Danielson's leg. And he turns around to pull loose from that. And when he turns back around, Garcia hits him with a pile driver. The concussed man with a history of concussions that retired once from concussions and then was collapsed and then ran headfirst in the steel stairs and then DDT'd on the concrete floor. And then 2 minutes later, who was coming back and executing offensive moves, now is hit by a pile driver and dropped on his head first. But that's not the finish, because then Garcia rolls into the sharpshooter and they actually have Bryan Danielson tap out to Daniel Garcia. Couldn't even beat him with the pile driver. And by the way, it was Jake Hager under the ring with the hand that reached out and grabbed him. Because he's another appreciator we hadn't seen at that point yet that night. And immediately my DVR froze because they can't manage their time. And again, they were massively almost out of time. What have they done here?
You know what? I liked Daniel Garcia when we first started seeing him. I'm sick of him now. And now I resent him. Yes, I hate to say it that way, but
it's full-fledged hatred now.
I hate the way Bryan Danielson's been used. I hate the way he's been used since they put him with Moxley. Let's not forget, He got concussed in that garbage match where he got pinned by Jericho to finish the match.
Yes.
That was the last match.
In a garbage match that he shouldn't have been in to begin with because he's talented. He doesn't need to just do the shit that everybody can do. And so he had to retire once before because concussions. Then he trains himself, he comes back, and he dignifies this goddamn upstart fucking popsicle stand of a wrestling promotion with his presence, starts doing the best work of anybody in this company and maybe some of the best stuff Brian's ever done, and immediately gets thrown into a goddamn group circle jerk with Plumber Moxley and his ilk, and now gets another concussion doing a garbage match trying to fucking work with Jericho's clown show, and comes back and is tapped out by Daniel Garcia. And along that line, they risk him getting another concussion to do the stupid shit leading up to him getting beat. Can you imagine if Ricky Starks had been the one to tap out Bryan Danielson? How about a Jay Lethal? How about a Powerhouse Hobbs? How about any motherfucker? Miro! Any motherfucker you might be able to sell at one ticket with, or draw an ounce of money with, or just have a fucking good match with.
I agree with all those names except Jay Lethal, yes.
I mean, I know poor Jay, now everybody's like, well, they were excited when he came. I was. When he first got there, I was like, thank God. Now they've minimized him to the point where who gives a shit? And if I know a lot of people are saying, oh shit, we got to see Jay Lethal. That means we're going to see the big pinhead. So that's another reason I want to see Jay. But Jay is a talented fucking performer that could do a lot more than what they're allowing him to do, while they show all the people that are going to suck Jericho's dick or fucking kiss Tony Khan's ass or, wear a Halloween costume that one or both of them can dress up like.
Well, again, you and I will disagree on Lethal, but I'll say this. If in 92, early 93, if the WCW fans had in any way reacted in a positive way to Eric Watts, that kind of would have been the way Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta have been used on this show.
Yeah.
For me, and again, that's the difference. Eric Watts had no fans. These guys do have fans. There are people there who like them. But I also think there's a lot of people like me that are like, God, I'm sick of these guys. Athletic. Potential for the future when they gain some weight or something, sure, but nonstop
but
every show.
That's the thing. Tony gets the opportunity to have money-drawing talent on his show there in front of him, and he can't recognize them. He either likes the kind of wrestler or goes on the recommendation of his brain trust for the kind of wrestler that is an indie darling for sure. All the people going to a rec center, all 500 of them would chant fight forever at these guys. But if you want to run a fucking real wrestling company, you need guys with personalities and charisma and size and a look and that can talk and that can work and have some experience in getting themselves over, and or the ability to do same if given the opportunity. You don't need bland, boring, identically sized, identically personalitied, aka none, fucking technical wrestlers that, have stolen their World of Sport spots off of watching Colt Cabana tapes. That's what you don't need, and that's what they get, because it's like when Laurinaitis was in charge of talent relations in the mid-2000s, he signed people just like him, the Mark Jendraks of the world, tall, nondescript, no body, no promo ability, 2 left feet in the ring. Tony is, he's not hiring people like himself, but he's hiring people like his EVP choices. Gymnasts, trampoline cowboys, no personality, can't take them seriously, not physically intimidating, big bunch of pussies. And it's a goddamn children's clown show. He has people there, and he won't use them because they don't fit what he is looking for. It's a roster of twinks, not a roster of goddamn wrestlers.
Can I ask you a question to play devil's advocate?
Sure.
Tony Khan has a young guy. Let's use Daniel Garcia for this example, but Wheeler Yuta's the exact same thing almost, except he's a babyface. He's putting him over. He's getting him on TV every week, while guys like Miro or Sting and Darby are not on the show every week. These guys are. They're getting promo time. He's putting them over big stars like Bryan Danielson. Again, devil's advocate, why isn't Tony doing it right when it comes to getting these guys on TV and getting them over?
Well, is he being advised not to do it right because his EVPs think that some of these people might get over them? Or is it just that they're so fucking stupid? Let's face it, none of these guys, they not only don't know anything about the wrestling business, I'm talking about the Cucamonga Kids and Harpo and their ilk. They not only don't know anything about the wrestling business, they think that they've revolutionized it, and you shouldn't do the shit that was always done because that's somehow wrong now. And instead, we should have 30-minute matches where we fight on the floor for 20 minutes of it and do the flips and entertain everybody with our goddamn callbacks to famous Japanese spots of 1974.
No, I don't think I don't think there's any respect for Japanese wrestling from that era, actually, from the people you're accusing.
Actually, call back more like from 2004. That's what they think is the good era of Japanese wrestling. The point is, that's what they do. They don't know anything about the business they're in to begin with, and they don't try to learn because they think they've somehow improved it for the better. They genuinely believe that wrestling is better now than it was 20 years ago before we got in it and showed people the way. You know, and as long as people believe something that's that fucking far out of goddamn bounds of reality, they're not going to learn anything, and they're not going to teach any of these young kids anything, and they're not going to teach Tony anything, because Tony is still one of the most inexperienced people involved. So he's not going to learn anything because they're not going to teach him anything. And the veterans that do know, if they're not afraid of, getting heat and losing their job more than actually being on a good program, they say that, but they don't get listened to. Remember, I always said JR, when he did the tweet about, yeah, all of you just cluster up like quail and fucking wait for somebody to land on you. If he tweeted that in public, he'd said it 5 times at least in front of fucking people who didn't listen to it in private. So that's, who's going to correct any of this? The people that Tony's listening to think that this is a good product and that wrestling is in a better place now than it was 20 years ago. So they're hopeless. Other people that might know better don't want to get heat and lose their job because they value their job more than their self-respect or pride, apparently. And there's very few people that can do this shit to begin with anymore. So it is what it is. But when shit's right in front of them and they turn left every time, it's amazing. So yeah, you can put that one down in the record books, folks. Daniel Garcia tapped out Bryan Danielson on free television and didn't get over a goddamn inch more than he was beforehand, because it was all in the middle of a bunch of hoo-ha that couldn't register because none of it made sense and it all came at you too fast.
When you see the last several months, and we saw the CM Punk year before he got hurt, and we assumed that CM Punk was rather assertive in what he would do and what he wouldn't do and who he would work with and who he wouldn't work with. When you see how Bryan Danielson's been used, do you think it would be a situation where he's making these decisions, or he's less assertive than CM Punk and he's talked into these things?
He's not coming up with this shit from scratch on his own. He's agreeing to it because he's a nice guy and he wants to help everybody. And I think Bryan probably thinks that Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta and all the rest of these fucking indie guys, well, they're really talented. They just need an opportunity because he looks at the glass half full. I look at the glass like it's all the way empty because the crack in the bottom where everything drained out and we're going to have to replace the whole goddamn thing. And what I'm saying is, I don't care if Frank Gotch comes back to fucking life and puts these guys over. They don't have the personality, the size, the look, the physical charisma, and they're not getting the mental education about wrestling that they need, all those things that they need to actually get over. Whereas a guy like Starks and a guy like Hobbs, and again, maybe we'll go through the whole roster next week and see, okay, can they field a legitimate team for a legitimate promotion, or do they have a few talented standouts and it's mostly all outlaw bullshit? But they, at least for a territory, maybe not a national promotion, but for a territory, 20 guys, they could probably field a really good team as far as putting together a talent roster for a territory. There's got to be 20 guys there that know what the fuck they're doing or could be taught. But past that, it's just bleh. And I don't... You said we saw the Year of Punk. We saw Danielson at Christmas time. MJF was brilliant. And I thought this summer, even before we knew that all the things that were going to go on in the WWE and how they were going to be in turmoil and etc., I thought this is going to be a bit of a dogfight this summer. You know, they're going to have some Cody going to the WWF. There's going to be some good shit going on. Now there's no Cody. Reigns is part-time. Brock's part-time. Fucking Punk is hurt. MJF is whatever the fuck's going on there. And the AEW program, nearing their 3rd anniversary, is worse than ever. And it's like Tony's learning in reverse. It's like he books in reverse and he learns in reverse. He was booking more logically when he was a complete amateur than he is now that he's got 3 years of experience. Just like talent comes into the company and you see them every once in a while on TV doing a job, and then after they've been there 6 months, they start popping up every week and winning. Everything's a mirror image. It's like the Bizarro world, but not Canada. Even worse.
Well, we'll see how much worse it gets this week on AEW Dynamite. I can't believe the booking of Bryan Danielson. That's, I could find, because it was so puzzling, and I can get a kick out of some of the bad things, as you know, but there was also good elements in the Ricky Starks escapade segment or two, whatever that was, and then the Christian Jungle Boy thing. Okay, not the way we would have done it, but almost close to a traditional wrestling feud in terms of there being a good guy and a bad guy. But the booking of Danielson, that's the most puzzling thing of all.
And see, that's the thing. He's not going to be a prick like Punk. And Punk would be proud of being a prick about his business or standing up for himself. Bryan Danielson is a nicer guy, and he loves wrestling, and he loves all the young, bright-eyed, innocent young people that want to be involved in wrestling, and he wants to help them. Well, the way that he could help most is by getting and keeping himself over despite his amateur booker and the people that are probably trying to stab him in the back and produce revenue for the company. That would be the best thing he could do right now for all the young wrestlers, instead of going in and working with them for 20 minutes and putting them over when nobody's going to buy it anyway. And next year, if somebody remembers that Daniel Garcia beat Bryan Danielson, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised in 6 months. And in terms of whether it means anything for Daniel Garcia, no, he's same level now he was before to the overall scheme of things. The AEW fans that they already had may like him a little more than they already did, but otherwise, really, you need to do the right thing with the right guy. One or the other alone doesn't work. This was neither the right thing nor the right guy.
And how impressive is Wheeler Yuta? He beat Daniel Garcia at the Ring of Honor pay-per-view.
Well, there you go. And then so by that standpoint, Anna Jay ought to be slapping Danielson around next week.
Now, I would pay to watch that match.
All right.